Hello, my name is Kevin Hutchinson.
I am Bretta Wright.
I am Larry McMillan.
Today we are going to be discussing chapters from the book There Are No Shortcuts by Rafe Esquith. Rafe is a teacher in Los Angeles, California. His book is about his beginnings as a teacher, his trials and tribulations as a teacher, and his passion and motivation for teaching. Bretta, tell us about Rafe's beginnings.
The early years of teaching for Rafe Esquith were very interesting. Rafe Esquith was known as a rebel in education. His rebel years began as early as student teaching. When Esquith decided the principal at the school he was student teaching for was wrong for not allowing Esquith to follow with his plans for the students. Rafe Esquith's reaction was one of pure anger that caused him to repeat his last 6 months of student teaching. As a young teacher, Esquith believed with that particular principal was an isolated incident and would not happen again, but that was not the case. The goal of many young teachers is to survive. Esquith had the same goal after he graduated. He received a job at a school he called Camelot. Camelot was a middle-class school with a population of 300. The school was extremely privileged. Esquith was taken off guard by how privileged the students were. During a planned trip to see 2 plays in San Diego, a little girl expressed how her trips to New York and Hawaii were better. This made Esquith realize the children of Camelot didn't need him to do anything for them. The breaking point with Camelot came with standardized testing. 2 highly respected teachers approached Esquith and gave tips on a teaching technique that would help students. The technique was cheating by checking students' answers and telling them to keep working to get 100%. Esquith expressed his concerns with the principal of Camelot. The principal told Esquith that the other teachers' tips were correct and he should follow the teacher's advice. Later in the year, Esquith was approached by the principal at a school he called the Jungle. The principal of the Jungle offered Esquith a job because he was told Esquith was hard to handle. The principal of the Jungle liked this quality and decided Esquith needed to be at the Jungle. Kevin, where did Esquith go from here?
Rafe Esquith had become an ambitious teacher, but what was his motivation? What had he decided was the definition of a good teacher? He was reminded of the movie The Natural with Robert Redford. Redford played a baseball player who wanted to be remembered as the best that ever played the game. Rafe wanted to be remembered in the same light. People even seemed to buy it. His Redford reference to his teaching career was an immediate success. Then, one day while deciding to work his inspirational magic on one of the female teachers, he met his match. She informed him that his desire to be remembered as great should not be the goal of an educator. Rafe then realized teaching should be a selfless profession, and he needed to care more about his students' future and less about his legacy. He decided to settle the score with the woman who gave him his wake-up call. He did so by marrying her. Marriage was just the start. He decided his path to being a good teacher was all wrong. Teaching would no longer be a popularity contest for Rafe. He needed a new mission. His mission would become a 2-part process. He had been teaching for a few years in the Jungle, a constant struggle, but he had earned the reputation as a good teacher. Kids were coming to school willingly. They were becoming more accomplished than they have ever been before. But there was one problem. In the midst of their hard work and success, the students became satisfied with the results. Making a better grade in a class than the previous year gave the students a false sense of accomplishment. He knew that a sense of complacency in the adult world, which is filled with competition from kids from Camelot, would leave his kids vulnerable to a world that is not kind. He came to the realization that our society wants everything to be easy. Kids could never understand the reality of a tough world unless they knew hard work and never being satisfied would keep them alive. His kids had a tough time with tasks like algebra. They were smart kids, no doubt, but they were lacking that mental grit it requires to overcome seemingly impossible tasks. They would need this type of grit to get through life. He read the Declaration of Independence to his class and reminded them that the line reading life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness meant they were not guaranteed happiness. They are only guaranteed the right to pursue it. After taking his students on a trip to see the great Lynn Harrell play the cello, one of his students wanted to know how Lynn learned to play such beautiful music. Lynn simply told the child, "There are no shortcuts," and that was it. It clicked with his students immediately without any prompting from Rafe. Kids came to school earlier, stayed later, they became hungry instead of satisfied. They would no longer make excuses for being the poor kids without all the breaks. Larry, tell us more about Rafe.
Rafe explains that teachers are hard workers aren't necessarily good teachers throughout his life lessons. He acknowledges his ability to learn from his mistakes throughout this chapter. Rafe does his best to make sure his students got the best it seemed materialistically. For example, every year he took his students on a field trip around the country to various places. Not to mention he bought all his students Christmas gifts every year. As he was winning his students over with field trips and material items, he was overworking himself with multiple jobs to help fund the activities which were wearing his body down physically. He learns that he must not overexhaust himself, but use his time and resources wisely to becoming a better teacher. From the reading, I learned as a future teacher, I must not push myself physically, mentally, and psychologically past my limits. But most importantly, understand mistakes are not bad as long as you learn from them and become a better teacher.
In his epilogue, Rafe refers to himself as still standing. He had begun one of those days we all have had. He had gotten the news of a 14-year-old runaway from his class that had left an abusive home and was living with a man. He got caught walking to school in the rain without an umbrella. After reaching school, he was informed that the new Xerox machine had taken priority over curriculum-based supplies, and his class, while rehearsing for a class play, had left him with a messy classroom. So a bad day would now be even longer, including the long walk home. It was one of those times he wondered if it's even worth it. However, two kids did stay behind to help. One was a popular kid named Danny, the other the less noticed Karen. Danny was wild about Karen. In his attempts to woo Karen, Danny was overly nice to her, and when she rejected the cocky class show-off, he wondered why. She informed him her boyfriend needed to care about everyone, not just the girls he wanted to impress. Rafe heard the entire exchange, and when Danny departed the room in shame, Rafe wanted to know how Karen became so sharp. Her reply was, because Rafe was her teacher. Rafe's walk would now be less difficult, and so would the rest of his days in the classroom. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Rafe Esquith as much as we have. The three of us have all learned what it takes to be better teachers and better role models for the students we plan to encounter.